Hello there. Welcome to the Good Old Days of Radio show. This is John Tefteller, your host and guide through the world of Norman Corwin. We started this last week, and this will be week 2. Last week you got to hear a program all about how radio was created, and then you got to hear Groucho Marx in a little thing called Unity Fair, and a Fred Allen show with guest Norman Corwin. This week we have one of probably Corwin's most famous, historical dramas. This is a historical drama. In my notes here that I was handed, it says it's a folk cantata. And I guess if I knew what a folk cantata was, I would say that that's the same thing I'm talking about. But anyway, it's called The Lonesome Train, and it's all about the aftermath of President Abraham Lincoln's assassination and the carrying of his body by train to his burial place. Quite an interesting dramatic show. Music by Burl Ives, the legendary folk singer and I think that's how you say it, contemporarian of Woody Guthrie. Anyway, it's The Lonesome Train, and it's a classic Corwin historical drama. March 21st, 1944, number 3 in this particular series of Columbia Presents Corwin. He had multiple series of Columbia Presents Corwin. So here we go.
Columbia Presents Corwin. This broadcast is dedicated to Carl Sandburg, poet and biographer of Abraham Lincoln. Tonight, Norman Corwin brings you the premiere radio performance of The Lonesome Train, a new folk cantata by Earl Robinson and Corporal Millard Lampell. The distinguished actor of stage, screen, and radio, Raymond Massey, will be heard in the role of Lincoln, with the composer narrating and Burl Ives in the principal singing role. Lynn Murray conducts the orchestra and chorus in The Lonesome Train.
And the tall man with the sad eyes and the stooping shoulders was tired. And so one night he did what everybody likes to do sometimes when they're tired. He went to a show. He went down to Ford's Theater in Washington Town, and he sat in a box. And it was the number 1 box because he was a pretty big man. Well, the play went on. And along about the middle of the evening, something happened that wasn't on the program. I guess you all know what that was. The news spread pretty fast.
They carried the news from Washington that Abraham Lincoln's time had come. John Wilkes Booth shot Lincoln dead with a pistol bullet through the head. The slaves were free, the war was won, but the fight for freedom was just begun. There were still slaves, the hungry and poor, men who were not free to speak. Freedom's a thing that has no ending. It needs to be cared for, it needs defending. A great long job for many hands, carrying freedom across the land.
A job for all the people, carrying freedom across the land. A job for Lincoln's people. And you know who Lincoln's people were.
a Kansas farmer, a Brooklyn sailor, an Irish policeman, a Jewish tailor,
An old storekeeper shaking his head, handing over a loaf of bread.
a buffalo hunter telling a story out in the Oregon Territory.
They were his people, he was their man. You couldn't quite tell where the people left off and where Abe Lincoln began.
There was a silence in Washington town when they carried Mr. Lincoln down. A lonesome train, a lonesome train. 7 coaches painted black.
Mr. Lincoln's funeral train, traveling the long road from Washington to Baltimore, Baltimore to Philadelphia, Philadelphia to New York, Albany, Syracuse, Cleveland, Chicago, to Springfield, Illinois.
Quiet train, carrying Lincoln home again.
It wasn't quite mist, it was almost rain, falling down on that funeral train. There was a strange and a quiet crowd, nobody wanting to talk out loud. Along the streets, across the square, Lincoln's people were waiting there.
A young soldier stood in the road and said,
You'd think they'd have warned him. Even a rattlesnake warned you.
and an old man answered,
This one must have been a copperhead.
Lonesome train on a lonesome track. 7 coaches painted black. They carried Mr. Lincoln down. The train started, the wheels went round. You could hear that whistle for miles around. Crying
They tell a story about that train. They say that Lincoln wasn't on that train. When that train started on its trip that day, Lincoln was in Alabama, miles away. Yes, sir, down in Alabama, in an old wooden church. Didn't have no paint, didn't have no floor, didn't have no glass in the window. Just a pulpit and some wooden benches.
Oh, great God Almighty, Lord.
just a pulpit and some wooden benches. Abe Lincoln on the last bench, away in the back, listening to the sermon, listening to the singing. You may bury me in the east, you may bury me in the west, but I'll hear the trumpet sound in the morning.
In the morning, Lord, in the morning.
This evening, brothers and sisters, I come in the holiest manner to tell how he died. He was lying there, his blood on the ground, covering the ground. And while he was lying there, the sun rose, and it recognized him. And just as soon as the sun recognized him, it clothed itself in sackcloth and ashes. Oh, and went down in the morning. Sun went down in the morning.
Yes, Lord, it went down.
He was lying there. The sky turned dark, and 7 angels leaped over the battlement of glory and come down to get him. And just when they came near him, he rose. Yes, Lord, he rose up and walked down among us. Praise God! He walked back down among his people. We got a new land. My dear friends, we got a new land. Ain't no riding boss with a whip. No have no backbiter. Lions can't go. Healers can't go. Ain't no devil to chain us. No high sheriff to bring us back. You may bury me in the east. You may bury me in the west. But I'll hear the trumpet sound in the morning. In the morning, Lord, in the morning. Down in Alabama, nothing but a pulpit and some wooden benches, and Mr. Lincoln sitting in the back, away in the back.
A lonesome train on a lonesome track. 7 coaches painted black.
A slow train, a quiet train, carrying Lincoln home again.
Washington, Baltimore,
Harrisburg,
Philadelphia.
Coming into New York town, you can hear that whistle 4 miles around, crying
From Washington to New York, people lined the tracks.
A strange crowd, a quiet crowd, nobody wanting to talk out loud.
At lonely country crossroads, there were farmers and their wives and kids standing around for hours. In Philadelphia, the line of mourners ran 3 miles, and most of them were deep in mourning. An old lady stood by the coffin and said,
Mr. Lincoln, are you dead? Are you really dead?
and some wanted him dead a long, long time. A cotton speculator turned away from the coffin, saying,
All right, boys, the drinks are on me.
For there were those who cursed the Union, those who wanted the people apart, while the sound of the freedom gun still echoed. Our heads dropped at the people's heart.
I've heard it said that when that train pulled into New York town, Mr. Lincoln wasn't around. He was where there there was work to be done, where there were people having fun. When that funeral train pulled into New York, Lincoln was down in a Kansas town, swinging his lady round and round.
Swing your ball, swing your paw, don't get the gas markings up.
When young and Lincoln came to dance, those Kansas boys didn't have a chance.
Grab your gal, circle forward. Make sure she ain't your mother-in-law. Now, promenade. Feed your chickens, milk your cows, have just much fun. So long, louse.
They were dancing people you could see. They were folks who liked being free. The men were tall and the girls were fair. They fought for the right to be dancing there.
Pretty little gal, out she goes. Swing your lady with a little seat toe. First to the right, then to the left, then to the L that you love best. Duck for the oyster, dig for the clam, pass right through the promised land.
Those Kansas boys didn't have a chance when young Abe Lincoln came to dance.
A lonesome train on a lonesome track. 7 coaches painted black. The train started, the wheels went round, on the way to Cleveland town. Albany, Utica, Syracuse. You could hear that whistle for miles around, crying freedom, freedom.
In Cleveland, the crowds were there. 250 come from Meadville, Pennsylvania. 500 with 2 brass bands from Detroit. 1 million people came from northern Ohio. They came to mourn, but some went home to celebrate.
Some in the north and some in the west, and some by the president's side. They cursed him every day that he lived and cheered on the day he died.
Yes, they cheered. The Copperheads, a New York politician who didn't like Lincoln, an Ohio businessman who didn't like Negroes, a Chicago newspaper editor who didn't like people.
You couldn't quite tell where the people left off and where Abe Lincoln began.
Naturally, the Copperheads went home to celebrate.
When that train rolled into Cleveland town, Mr. Lincoln wasn't around. Lincoln sat in a hospital ward far from the funeral train. Lincoln sat in a hospital ward talking to quiet a soldier's pain.
You mind if I stand by the bed?
No, sir.
Where were you wounded, son?
At Bull Run, sir, and Chancellorsville, I was shot when we stormed the hill. I've been worried since Chancellorsville.
about killing, sir. It's wrong to kill.
I admit, son, that's been bothering me. How to make the war and the word agree.
Quiet and cold by the side of the bed.
There is a reason.
There is a reason, Lincoln said.
Until all men are equal and all are free, there will be no peace. While there are whips and chains and men to use them, there will be no peace. After the battles, after the blood and wounded, when the chains are smashed and the whips are broken, and the men who held the whips are dead. When men are brothers and men are free, the killing will end. The war will cease when free men have a free men's peace.
I'll be going home soon, the soldier said. Lincoln turned from the side of his bed.
I'll see you there.
I'll see you there, Mr. Lincoln said.
Lincoln's neighbors came, farmers from over in the next county, shopkeepers and shoemakers, men who'd hired him for a lawyer, men who'd split rails with him. They came from Mattoon and Salem, fellas who'd swapped stories with Abe Lincoln during those long Illinois winter nights. Lincoln's neighbors were there.
While the sound of the freedom gun still echoed, Copperhead struck at the people's heart.
When that train hung in the Springfield, you know where Lincoln was. He was standing with his friends in the back of the crowd. Yes, sir!
Standing tall, standing proud, wearing a shawl instead of a
Abe Lincoln was with his friends, telling jokes.
I presume you all know who I am. I am humble Abraham Lincoln. My politics are short and sweet, like the old woman's dance.
Mr. Lincoln, isn't it right that some men should be masters and some should be slaves?
Brother, if God intended some men to do all the work and no eating, he would have made some men with all hands and no mouths.
standing tall, standing proud.
Well, I say America for Americans. What happens on the other side of the ocean shouldn't be any skin off our backs. Right, Mr. Lincoln?
Well, I'll tell you, ma'am, it seems to me the strongest bond of human sympathy outside your family, of course, should be the one uniting all working people of all nations, tongues, and kindreds.
Wearing a shawl instead of a shroud.
Somehow I wouldn't expect the President of the United States to be such a common man. I think God must have loved the common people. He made so many of them.
Wear a shawl instead of a shroud.
Mr. Lincoln, how does it feel to be president?
Well, now, it feels sort of like a fella they ran out of town on a rail. If it wasn't for the honor of it, I'd just as soon walk.
They were his people, he was their man. You couldn't quite tell where the people left off and where Abe Lincoln began.
A lonesome train on a lonesome track. Seven coaches painted black.
You have been listening to The Lonesome Train by Earl Robinson and Corporal Millard Lampell, directed and produced by Norman Corwin for CBS, and starring the distinguished actor Raymond Massey in the role of Lincoln. Earl Robinson himself narrated, and Burl Ives sang the principal role, with Richard Huey as the preacher. With Mr. Huey in the church scene were Laura Duncan, Lavinia White, William Vesey, and Charles Alford. The orchestration was by the composer and by Amadeo Di Filippi. Others in the cast were Hester Sondergaard, Lon Clark, Larry Robinson, and Ben Ossipow. Lynn Murray conducted both the orchestra and the Jeff Alexander Choir. Next week at this time, Columbia presents a new play by Norman Corwin entitled Savage Encounter, with an original score composed and conducted by Bernard Herrmann. Harry Marble speaking. This is CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Okay, Norman Corwin's The Lonesome Train. Very dramatic, very kind of patriotic thing as we're getting closer and closer to 4th of July. Notice the thunderous applause for that at the end. It just went on and on and on. I think that's one of the biggest amounts of applause I've ever heard at the end of a radio program. The audience really went wild for that. And remember, this was right smack in the dab in the middle of World War II, so people were feeling patriotic and feeling that kind of thing. All right, the Good Old Days of Radio show will be back on Thursday with another great drama by Norman Corwin, this one called Daybreak. And if you're liking these type of things, yeah, we have a lot more in store for you. We have a whole 10-week series of Norman Corwin material, and we're kind of just getting started. This is the beginning of week 2. Anyway, all right, this is John Tefteller in the Good Old Days of Radio show, and I will see you this coming Thursday.